Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you are about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. I'm once again doing a sitting video, and it's going to be very off the cuff as well. So yeah. Even though despite the magnitude of this of the topic that is mentioned in the title, it is not necessarily a topic that I haven't really touched upon in the in this channel's past. And like any overeducated citizen of a of a developed country, I do have some idea with regards to with regards to the topic at hand, or how I would choose to implement it. And it is for this reason that I made this video. How I would write, develop, etc. How I decided, in regards to how I decided to title it, Constitution. And in case you're wondering, yes, this entire video is based off of that one throwaway line that I made in last week's video. So, with those parameters out of the way, I'm not going to get into the Constitution itself just now. I do instead want to, want to describe a little bit, not necessarily why I want to, not why I want to make this video. I already did that, but what I see as the actual point of the video, as in what is a Constitution? Why would it be necessary? Well, any legal experts who are in my audience, or legal specialists, legal scholars, what have you, legal professionals, feel free to correct me. But I see a constitution as basically a contract. It is a it is a document which describes the relationships between between the individuals of a society, as well as how that society can interact with other such individuals, or with other individuals of other similarly defined societies, or even the societies themselves, or more specifically, how the representatives of these society interact with other equivalent representatives from other societies. And you'll notice that I'm using some broad language, because, well, there are some people who say that that any kind of nation building is actually is a mistake. And to some extent, I have actually platformed or talked about or presented that kind of talk in my channel's history before. But even if you disregard that, you still need some kind of you still need some kind of definition for how exactly for exactly how the social relationships within within a specific group, regardless of, especially one of this size, which with certain which has a greater administrative requirement, so to speak, would in fact would in fact function. So therefore, even anarchistic societies would still have some level of still have some kind of a constitution, in order to describe what exactly citizens can do to each other, and basically practice, or can basically do to each other, with each other, practice harm reduction, while also expanding upon its capabilities for for prosperity, or for happiness, for well-being. With that, and now that I've defined that, it's time I delved into the actual document itself, starting, like any good contract, with a preamble, defining what this what this document is supposed to be, and who the parties defining it actually are. And I'm thinking, and obviously it's going to be citizens. It's going to be citizens, but it's not just going to be between various citizens. It's also going to be between citizens and a and a defined administrative body for these citizens, basically the government or the state, or both. And those administrative bodies will have will have their own offices, but that doesn't need to go in the preamble. That will go into the actual body of the Constitution. The first part of the Constitution would basically go a little bit deeper into uh, into defining who these respective bodies are. So therefore, who is a citizen? Who counts as a citizen, and what does it take to actually and can citizen and then the question of, can citizenship be gained? Can it be lost? Can it be altered in some capacity? What have you? And also, this part would also describe the principles upon which citizens can act within the society, not necessarily the rights themselves, because that would take quite a while to really effectively define. And also, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the Constitution. The legal code can do that. But the Constitution basically says you have, that we want you to be able to do this, this, and this. And then the legal code exists. Well, to be able to give you this, this, and this, then we provide this, 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 these other things, etc. So that is basically what citizenship, how citizenship is defined in the Constitution. The one aspect of citizenship that I do want to define in the Constitution, insofar as law is concerned, is actually voting. So how the citizen interacts with the administrative structures of the of this society. And I am primarily talking about talking here about voting, passive voting and active voting. For those of you who don't know the difference, active voting means being able to means handing in the ballot. Passive voting means being on the ballot. So, and this is basically what I would define. Who could who can vote in elections, what kind of elections, and as far as possible, I actually would prefer for voting to just be defined, less less on matters of credential and more on matters of, shall we say, areas of accountability, so to speak. So, for example, if you live in one specific city, you can only vote for the mayor of that specific city, not some other city. When it comes to passive voting, again, there are some conditions there to be outlined. Age, maybe credentials, but if there are any credentials defined, then I would choose for those credentials to be as maybe not as broad as possible, but to be but something that cannot be abused or shrunk. It is those credentials still have to be plausibly should still be plausibly gained by a broad section of the populace, in such a way that they have the possibility to represent others, and to allow for the enforcement of of the rights of their own constituency, their own community within this broader society. Once those aspects are cleared up, I would then I would go into the actual administrative structures. So what are the various functions of the state and of the government? What are the various offices that can be held within that within that state, within that government? To some extent, that has already been defined by defining the passive right to vote, and therefore saying therefore defining categories for thereby defining the credentials for various office categories. This is where we go into presenting the office categories themselves, and really delving into what it is that each can do, and how exactly representation works. What are the duties of each representative within each kind of office? That includes describing whether there is a president, what can the president do, how the actual legislative body ends up working. So the parliament or the Congress, whatever you want to call it. And also maybe define how people the degree to which people can actually interact with this are able to interact with this are able to interact with these structures. So stuff like petitions or demands would also be included here. But also included here, I think, would be how many citizens per representative. Or you could also choose to do what the U.S. kind of does and what Norway more or less kind of does, and weigh it by administrative subdivision. But really, land doesn't vote. So in that sense, one could argue that in that sense you really shouldn't. Because land doesn't vote, you really should your first criteria, especially if you want to do a democratic nation, or one that more accurately sticks to certain principles, which I very much trust. Your first criterion should be population count. You could argue that if someone has a larger share within an administrative subdivision, that their responsibilities are therefore proportionally greater. But that is just something that makes people who buy land, and that is simply something that favors people who buy land or who control large areas of land. And really, you kind of have to. And at that point, you really kind of have to ask the question of what is it about those particular people that makes or about that particular piece of land that really makes that particular kind of arrangement necessary. And for the most part, I don't really think that that is anything that would actually be necessary. Another part of the state that should be defined within the Constitution is the judicial apparatus. So how do people get in, and on which functions can they get in, and then what are the duties, what are the definitions of the what are the duties of this legal system, how are these how do people enter these various duties, and also is there any kind of, say, progression within this system? Can one go, for example, from a local court to the Supreme Court, or any kind of highest legislative body, highest judicial body? Sorry, because the legislative is something else. So yeah. Another thing that ought to be defined within the Constitution is stuff like the military. So how many people can enter the military? How many people? How large is the military? What counts as eligibility for the military? And also, what are the limits of military power? That is very much something that needs to be considered. Of course, there are to be some limits on non-military executive power, but those would have already been defined in previous parts of the Constitution. I am considering now going into various aspects of government, and defining really what the various other non-legislative offices could do. but but I'm not particularly. I have to say I'm not particularly sure about it. I am primarily talking about stuff uh, uh, like uh, how the U.S. calls them departments, but everyone else calls them ministries. I already have some videos on that, but I'm not necessarily sure optimal. That is necessarily the optimal solution. Personally, I would want to define them because they are very much, because they're very helpful in at least tracing out the guidelines for the principles of the freedoms the citizens have. But at the same time, I recognize that these that these guidelines are really that these guidelines or these necessities can change depending on depending on a wide variety of factors, from ecological to uh, tactical. and and as such my definition might not necessarily be the most apt. Still, this is what I think uh, the Constitution ought to hold. So for a brief recap, we have the preamble, we have we have the rights of the citizenship, or of the citizenry, how citizenry, the avenues of interaction of the citizenry with the administrative structures, in the administrative structures themselves, then potentially the executive and the judicial ones as well. And maybe as a coda for that, you could also add various other various other definitions with regards to certain rights that you consider inalienable. Potentially when it comes to stuff like freedom of expression, or which I'd actually divide between freedom of communication and freedom of assembly. Then there are also things like and then there would also be matters of freedom of movement, or freedom of consciousness, freedom of the ability to act independently within the state, or maybe not independently but autonomously, because true independence, especially within this kind of structure, is actually logically impossible for reasons I will not go into now, but plenty of philosophers have already defined. And also potentially what kind of productive capacities or productive labor some kind people could take on, and in what conditions, or what conditions are they to expect or be provided with, so to speak. And once that would be done, I'm thinking, I still think that I still want this constitution to have some kind of coda, maybe something tied into what happens if you if you break any particular aspect of it, or what what its limits actually are, what could be added to it, with the coda being potentially a dedication that everything here will be defined to the highest extent of the of its founding principles, and also potentially what kind of measuring stick would be used in order to gauge the effectiveness of new measures that would exist within the constitutional body. And yeah, I'll say that is it. That is, in broad strokes, how I think the the Constitution of a specific country ought to be my ideal construct for for how a constitution ought to be put together would look like. I hope I wasn't too boring or too meandering. If I did, and anyway, thank you for your presentation. If you didn't find me boring or meandering, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the concept of this video itself or to my particular execution of it, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I primarily talk about literature, or more precisely the print medium and selected works therein. So if that sounds like it could be of interest to you, then the link to check it out is in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I would suggest you check out should you choose to. If my thoughts on the print medium are not necessarily of interest to you, then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog, where aside from the occasional dip into into political concepts and my personal execution of them, I primarily do a lot of material on television and cinema, reviews, overviews, rewrites, etc. So if that sounds like it could be up your alley, then go ahead and check them out. If, however, none of what I've said to you so far really captures your attention, then I guess you're free to do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. Until next time, I have been the One Take Man.